Number 1. Invasion of the Soviet Union. On June 22, 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest land invasion in human history. Over 3 million German soldiers, 600,000 vehicles, and 600,000 horses surged across the Soviet border in a bold attempt to destroy communism and seize territory for Germany's expanding empire. It was a gamble built on arrogance. Hitler believed the Soviet Union would collapse in a matter of months. His generals had doubts, but Hitler's racial ideology convinced him that Slavic peoples were inferior, that their armies were disorganized, and that the regime would fall like a house of cards. Initially, the offensive looked like a stunning success. The German blitzkrieg smashed through Soviet defenses, captured millions of prisoners, and advanced hundreds of miles. Kiev fell, Smolensk fell. By October, German troops were at the gates of Moscow. But then came the Russian winter. German high command had assumed the war would be over before winter. Troops lacked proper winter clothing, engines froze, lubricants turned to sludge. Supply lines, stretched across thousands of miles, collapsed under the weight of snow and Soviet counterattacks. By December, the Germans had stalled. The Soviets, far from defeated, launched a massive counteroffensive and pushed the Wehrmacht back. The war in the East had only just begun. The mistake? Hitler underestimated the scale, tenacity, and industrial power of the Soviet Union. He opened a two-front war that Germany couldn't sustain, draining men and material from every other theater. Instead of conquering Russia in 6 weeks, Germany found itself trapped in a brutal war of attrition that would ultimately lead to its ruin. Number 2. The attacks on Pearl Harbor. On December 7, 1941, Japanese aircraft thundered through the skies over Hawaii, launching a surprise attack on the American naval base at Pearl Harbor. Battleships exploded, planes were torched, over 2,400 Americans were killed. Tactically, it was a stunning blow, but strategically, it was one of the most catastrophic miscalculations in modern history. Japan's goal was to cripple the US Pacific Fleet and buy time to conquer Southeast Asia without interference. What Japanese leaders didn't anticipate was the scale and speed of the American response. Within 24 hours, the United States declared war on Japan. 4 days later, Hitler, honoring the Tripartite Pact, declared war on the United States, a decision he was not obligated to make. Now, Germany and Japan were at war with a country whose economy dwarfed both of theirs combined. The United States would go on to produce over 300,000 aircraft, 100,000 tanks, and thousands of ships before the war was over. Japan had struck a mighty blow, but in doing so, it unified American public opinion, brought a sleeping superpower into the war, and ensured the eventual destruction of the Axis. The mistake? Japan gambled that America would negotiate. Instead, it galvanized one of the most powerful industrial machines in history. Number 3. The Dunkirk halt order. In May 1940, the German blitzkrieg rolled through the Low Countries and into France. British and French forces were surrounded and pushed back to the coast, trapped at the port of Dunkirk, awaiting destruction. The German panzers were within reach. British defeat seemed certain. But then, in a decision that stunned his generals, Hitler ordered the tanks to halt. The reasons are still debated. Some say Hitler feared a counterattack or wanted to let the Luftwaffe finish the job. Others believe he hoped Britain would sue for peace if he spared their army. Whatever the motive, the delay gave Britain time. Over 9 days, the Royal Navy and civilian vessels rescued over 330,000 Allied troops from the beaches. Though they left behind weapons and supplies, the core of the British Army survived. These soldiers would go on to fight in North Africa, Italy, and eventually France again. The mistake? Hitler missed a chance to crush Britain's military strength early in the war. The Dunkirk evacuation became a symbol of defiance and a rallying point for continued resistance. Number 4. Mussolini's incompetence in Greece and North Africa. In October 1940, without consulting Hitler, Italian dictator Benito Mussolini launched an invasion of Greece from Albania. He believed it would be a quick and glorious conquest, but he gravely misjudged Greek resistance. The Greeks not only repelled the invasion, they counterattacked and drove Italian forces back into Albania. Embarrassed and angry, Hitler had to send German troops to bail Mussolini out, delaying the invasion of the Soviet Union by several vital weeks. Meanwhile, Mussolini also attempted to seize Egypt and the Suez Canal, a crucial Allied supply route. His forces were again humiliated by a much smaller British army, prompting Hitler to dispatch General Rommel and the Afrika Korps to rescue the campaign. These distractions in the Balkans and North Africa drained German resources, delayed the invasion of the Soviet Union, and scattered Axis focus. The mistake? Mussolini's delusions of grandeur forced Hitler into unnecessary campaigns, opening new fronts and weakening Germany's strategic position. His blunders were costly detours that helped seal the Axis's fate. Number 5. The Battle of Stalingrad. In the summer of 1942, Germany launched an offensive into southern Russia to seize the oil fields of the Caucasus. But Hitler became fixated on a secondary target, Stalingrad, a city with little strategic value but great symbolic meaning. It bore Stalin's name. Hitler wanted to take it as a personal and ideological victory. German troops entered the city in August. They fought street by street, room by room. The battle devolved into urban hell, snipers, flamethrowers, and hand-to-hand combat in shattered buildings. By November, the Germans held most of the city, but the Soviets had a plan. They launched Operation Uranus, a massive pincer movement that encircled the German Sixth Army. For 2 months, Hitler refused to allow a retreat. Supplies ran out, temperatures dropped, morale collapsed. In February 1943, over 90,000 German soldiers surrendered, the largest capitulation in German history. The Sixth Army was annihilated. The mistake? Hitler's obsession with capturing a symbolic city led to the destruction of one of Germany's best armies. Stalingrad marked the turning point on the Eastern Front, and a psychological blow Germany never recovered from. Number 6. Germany's oil crisis and overextended logistics. Germany's military was highly mechanized and fuel-hungry, but it lacked natural oil reserves. Before the war, it imported oil from the Soviet Union and Romania. Once it invaded the USSR, those Soviet supplies were gone. Germany relied heavily on synthetic fuel plants, which were inefficient and vulnerable to Allied bombing. As the war progressed, oil shortages became catastrophic. Panzers ran out of fuel during critical offensives. The Luftwaffe was grounded more often than it flew. Retreats were hampered by immobile equipment, abandoned on the side of roads. By 1944, the Allies had systematically targeted Germany's oil infrastructure. Refineries, rail lines, and storage depots were bombed day and night. The German war machine stalled, not from lack of weapons or men, but from lack of gasoline. The mistake? Hitler committed to a long, mechanized war without securing the energy resources to sustain it. In the end, his army had tanks it couldn't move and planes it couldn't fly. Number 7. Hitler's micromanagement and delusions in the final years. As the tide turned against Germany, Hitler's leadership became increasingly erratic. He no longer listened to his generals. He dismissed facts, rejected intelligence, and insisted on no retreat orders, even when withdrawal was the only sane option. In Normandy, he delayed moving panzer divisions to the beaches for hours after the D-Day landings. In the Ardennes, he launched the Battle of the Bulge, wasting what remained of Germany's reserves on an impossible offensive. His belief in wonder weapons like the V-2 rocket blinded him to reality. These weapons caused terror, yes, but they had no strategic impact on the battlefield. By 1945, entire German armies were being ordered to hold cities at all costs, often resulting in encirclement and destruction. Hitler's refusal to negotiate or even acknowledge defeat doomed both his regime and millions of lives. The mistake? Hitler's increasing detachment from reality turned him into Germany's greatest liability. His micromanagement strangled initiative, his ego overruled strategy, and his delusions turned a lost war into an apocalypse. War magnifies human flaws. In World War II, egos clashed with strategy, ideology clashed with reality, and overconfidence turned victories into disasters. From the snowy ruins of Stalingrad to the burning wreckage at Pearl Harbor, each of these blunders helped shape the outcome of the most devastating war in human history. Had different decisions been made, had Hitler not invaded the Soviet Union, had Japan not attacked Pearl Harbor, had Mussolini stayed out of the Balkans, history might have followed a very different path. But they were made, and the world we live in today was shaped by the consequences.